Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alana, and this is my corner of the internet in which I review books, geek out about books, and all of those things. So if you like to be a nerd with me, you've come to the right place. Today's video is a book review. This is a nonfiction, which is kind of exciting for me because I don't typically read nonfiction for fun. I struggle with it, but just because I have a hard time staying focused and I read it so slowly, even if it's a topic that I'm really interested in. So, By Any Other Name by Simon Morley is a nonfiction book about the cultural history of the rose. And I accompanied this book with the audiobook that recently became available. This book was sent to me by the publisher Kaye Publicity back at the end of October of this past year, and I finally got around to reading it. And I'm so glad I did. This was really enjoyable. And Simon Morley managed to make the rose fascinating. So the rose is actually my favorite flavor. It's my favorite. Actually, it is one of my favorite flavors. In rose, when it comes to the culinary side of things, it's a flavor that I actually enjoy. So the rose is my favorite flower, is what I meant to say. And even when I was 4 years old, I mean, from a little girl, I've loved the rose. I remember this was pre-kindergarten days. My mom and I one summer, it was spring or summer, went to, it was either Home Depot or Lowe's, and we picked out a rose. We planted it at the side of the house. She planted it, I watched. And it was there for quite some time. It never really thrived, though. It's gone now. But it never really thrived, but I loved that little rose bush nonetheless. And so the rose is just, maybe it's cliche, but for it to be my favorite flower, but I've always loved roses. By Any Other Name, Morley put so much research into this book that it's really impressive. And this is only 247 pages long, and so it's not a long book, but he uses this real estate, if you will, to dive into the biology and the genealogy of the rose. Really, I had no idea that there were so many different types of roses when it comes to, again, the different types, the different sizes of the head of the flower, the colors, the scents. Some of them can be scentless. Some of them can have thorns. Some of them can be thornless. And not only that, he goes into extensive detail about how over thousands of years, how it's been bred to be as recognizable to us as it is today, even though, even ancient civilizations like the Greeks and the Romans revered the rose. Morley extensively goes into how roses have had a lot of impact on religion, just how various religions use the rose to symbolize certain things or demonize certain things in some cases, how it's very important in literature and art, fashion, cosmetics, perfumery. It's almost... It would be so interesting, and I don't know how you would do this. It would take so much time to do, but as a perfect person who loves perfumery, the rose is such a common note in fragrances, even if it's not the dominant note. The number of fragrances I would be curious to know that have a rose note in them. Music, there's a well-known band called Guns N' Roses. Not only that, there are so many songs with roses or rose in the title. And also he goes into the commercialization of the rose, especially when it comes to Valentine's Day, particularly in the United States. He has some really impressive statistics in here that is also mildly concerning about just how much we consume roses, for Valentine's Day alone, and how that commercialization has led to some degradation of the rose when it comes to the species itself. And then he does go quite a bit into how roses have been used to symbolize female sexuality. So he covers a huge plethora of content in this book. And this is a book about a plant. He literally made a book about a plant enjoyable. And who knew that reading and focusing in on one plant in particular could be so interesting, especially for somebody like me who is not a horticulturalist. Simon Moreland, I called him Simon like we're friends. He doesn't know I exist. Simon Morley is not a horticulturalist himself. He just loves the rose. In a sense, you could call this his 247-page love letter to the rose. But it's evident in some of his own personal examples or anecdotes that he includes in here that he loves roses and he loves plants and gardening and flowers. So that does definitely come through in this book. But again, myself, I like plants. I like how plants and flowers make a living space lively and vibrant. But I am not a person who has a green thumb. I kill succulents. I can't keep a basil plant alive. For me, more often than not, I'm thinking, oh, it's a plant, it's a flower. It needs all the water. I want to love it with water, and then I end up killing it. Or it's the exact opposite end of the spectrum, and I dehydrate it to death because I forget that I need to water my plants. Right now, I got a plant out there. I named him Phil, and I got this plant because it's a plant that can thrive for long periods of time without water. Well, I've gone so long without watering him. He's looking yellow. Not good. Finally gave him some water after several weeks last night. I hope Phil will make it. If not, rest in peace, my man. If you love plants and you like, I don't know if you would say if you like nature writing, but if you are fascinated by plants or you love plants, this will definitely be a fun read for you. Of course, if you love the rose, this would be a really good read for you. If you are like me, who appreciates plants, likes plants, but is not the type of person who knows how to garden or, keep a plant alive for the most part, and you need, the most basic plants or else they're going to die. This is still interesting, and there is still a lot in here that you could glean from the text. What I think most people will benefit from reading something like this, like why should I read a book about one plant, one flower? If you are fascinated, a person who is interested in pop culture, this is an interesting study in how common symbols that are now mainstream come to be. I think that people would be able to kind of tie that together. If you're a person who wants to become a more analytical and critical reader, a text like this is very beneficial because plants and flowers, especially the rose, make so many appearances in literature. And how an author is alluding to a flower or a plant and when in the context he's speaking, and the reader needs to go between the lines to get more richness out of the text. This will help train a reader's eye to start looking for those symbols and then deciding to dive deeper into those symbols instead of just thinking, oh, the writer is talking about a rose, on to the next one. No, there may be a reason there may be a deeper reason why that author is alluding to a particular flower at a particular time. And because Morley gives you the religious importance, the importance it has in art, fashion, etc., music, you could use this as a text to kind of go back to if a rose pops up in a certain context and say, oh, so maybe that's what this author is trying to say, because I know in history, the ancient Greeks thought about roses in this way. I mean, it would be a good book to have on your shelf or something like that. Also, and this was the most pleasant surprise for me, so I started reading this book via the audiobook in January of this year. And at the same time, I had begun reading Swann's Way by Marcel Proust, which is the first volume. There's a hair that's like floating around like this. The first volume of his In Search of Lost Time, 1 out of 6 volumes. Okay. And Marcel Proust refers to and writes about flowers all the time. Chrysanthemums and roses, and he gets into some certain vegetables and stuff like that. he is always discussing plants and flowers in Swan's Way. So this ended up being an unexpected and pleasurable companion read to Swan's Way. This piece of hair is, you're killing me, Smalls. And it made me hyper focus on the flowers that Proust was talking about. And that just made me think a little bit more deeply about why Proust is talking so much about flowers. What is he really trying to say here? So if you are a fan of In Search of Lost Time, or you're starting to read In Search of Lost Time, and you want a more unconventional companion read, I think this would be a good one to add to your repertoire. Because, In Search of Lost Time, because it is 6 volumes and it is filled with philosophy and imagery, etc., people often use companion reads with it, and I think this is one that would be more unique. You might have to read between the lines a little bit more, but not the point. So yeah, that's my review of this. Again, I used the audiobook that helped me get through it. No fault of the text itself. It's just me and how I interact with fiction or nonfiction. And the audiobook was narrated by Jennifer M. Dixon. I'm not sure who she is, but she did a good job. And she has a more mature voice. So reading it was kind of like snuggling up next to your grandmother, and she's, reading you a cozy story, and it's just very relaxing. It was, I enjoyed it, especially, sitting up in bed at night and having, knitting a little bit and listening to this book. So I didn't rate this book. I just said highly recommend. I didn't feel like it needed to be rated. But yeah, highly recommend. Really enjoyable, unexpected. I was not expecting the publisher to send this to me. They sent me another book earlier in that year, and then a few months later, this one popped up. And it's always fun when you get something that maybe you necessarily would not have picked out for yourself, but it ends up being just what you need, because it lined up perfectly with me reading Swan's Way. So that is my review of this book. Are you a person that is able to read nonfiction without the help of an audiobook? I admire you if that is the case. Most people can. Have you read this book? Are you interested in this book? It was actually published last year. And would you be interested in picking this book up now that it's come across your radar? So again, thank you for listening to my review. Please like, subscribe, leave me a comment. If you would like to see what I get up to on the interwebs, I'm very active on Instagram, and that link is down below. So is my blog, in case you could care less about Instagram. I don't blame you. But you still want to read my older book reviews. That's why that's there. And I'm going to wrap it up and call my parents, because I want to know what they're having at their house for dinner. My mother's a good cook. So working smarter, not harder. Why cook when I can go to Carol's house? Her name is not Carol. Okay, bye.